The air in the travel agency was dry, industrial, stale with plastic chairs, decades of cheap carpet, and a clock ticking too loudly above the door like a metronome counting down the end of something. No one else seemed to notice. There was a bowl of dusty mints on the counter, some brochure rack slowly bleeding color in the corner, and beside me, Linda. Crossed legs, polished nails, a scarf too tight around her neck like she'd dressed for the appearance of warmth, not the need for it. I sat hunched beside her, my coat still folded over my knees like some afterthought. We weren't here for me. I was just the signature. Across the table, the travel agent smiled too much. One of those women who had perfected the art of nodding without listening. She shuffled forms, clicked a mouse, then laid out the plan like it was good news. 13 days in Italy, 6 cities, full insurance coverage, and lodging already prepaid. All we need now is your authorization, Mr. Wilson. I didn't respond right away, just stared at the sheet of paper in front of me. My name already typed into the financial guarantor box, with a line underneath, empty and expectant, a space waiting to trap me. Linda leaned in slightly, nudging my arm. Her voice was light, rehearsed. It's just formalities, Mark. You're tired. You've been working like crazy lately, don't overthink it. I looked at her, and for the first time in months I really looked. The way she sat back in the chair, the tight line of her mouth whenever I hesitated, the glances she exchanged with the agent. Glances I wasn't supposed to notice. She looked like a woman finishing a transaction, not making a plan with her husband. She was already somewhere else in her mind. Europe, probably. Or maybe back home in that kitchen I built with my own 2 hands, where she'd started whispering on the phone more often. She always said it was work. Or Tyler. Or both. Tyler. Her son, 22, still living under our roof. Barely there, always disappearing, always back in time for a hot meal and a favor. We never said it, but he was the wedge that turned every dinner into a performance. He didn't hate me. No, that would have been too simple. He tolerated me, like an unwanted step between rooms in a house. It had started small, the way most cracks do. Doors closed mid-conversation. Paperwork filed without my name. Linda started saying things like, "We figured it out," without ever explaining who we meant. Once, I caught Tyler on the phone with his sister, his real sister from his real father's side. He said, "Mark? He doesn't need to know about this. It'll just confuse him." Confuse me. I was the one keeping the lights on, paying the mortgage, repairing the broken water heater at midnight last November when the pipes burst and Tyler was out partying. I was the one making sure that house didn't crumble like the promises Linda used to whisper when we still shared a bed like it meant something. But maybe confusion was easier than confrontation. I scanned the papers now, slowly. One line caught my eye. Emergency contact, Tyler J. Owens. Relationship to traveler, head of family. It didn't compute at first. I reread it again. Head of family. I looked at Linda. She was staring straight ahead, unreadable, arms crossed. She didn't explain, didn't defend it. When did Tyler become the head of my family? I flipped the page. Family members traveling. Linda Owens, Tyler Owens, Haley Owens, Ryan Owens. For names, for passports, for flights. Not 5, not me. I forced my voice to stay level. You said we were all going. She blinked slowly, already irritated by the question. No, I said we were booking for the kids. You've been working too much anyway. I figured we'd go ahead and you'd join later if you could. If I could? I opened my mouth to ask another question, but she cut me off. Mark, please. You said you were fine with this. We talked about it, remember? No, we didn't. But she said it with such certainty, such practiced finality. I began to doubt myself. I hadn't been sleeping. I'd been waking up every night at 3 a.m. thinking about money, about the missing pieces of my life I couldn't name. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe she had told me between one of Tyler's tantrums and the late shifts I took on to cover her car repairs. Maybe I'd missed it. I looked at the cost summary. Total expenses, €4,800. Bank account, mine. Card on file, mine. Signatory, me. Vacation, not mine. This is what families do, Linda said, still smiling. They support each other. Whose family? She didn't notice how my hands had begun to clench. Or maybe she did and chose not to care. I should have walked out then. I should have taken the papers, shredded them, walked straight to my truck and let the cold wind take the rest of the words I'd swallowed for the past decade. But instead I sat there, because something inside me still wanted to believe it could be a misunderstanding. That this wasn't deliberate. That I wasn't being excluded, I was just being tired. Just being paranoid. Just being Mark. That's what Linda said whenever the truth got too close. You're just tired. But it wasn't tiredness that made me remember. It wasn't fatigue that brought back the nights when Linda changed passwords on shared accounts and forgot to tell me. Or when Tyler started managing the grocery budget without my input, brushing it off with "don't worry, I got it," like I was an elderly parent, not the man feeding them both. It wasn't exhaustion that reminded me how I'd been left off the RSVP list for Tyler's graduation. Or how, when I'd finally shown up late from work, sweating and covered in engine grease, the seat saved for me had been accidentally taken by his biological father. A man who never paid a single bill, but smiled big for the photos. It wasn't tiredness that made me remember the way Linda stopped using my last name on social forms. Owens this, Owens that, like I'd never existed. Like I was the ghost in the house. Paying, fixing, mowing, repairing, never belonging. The travel agent was saying something about optional excursions. Rome, Florence, Milan. I didn't answer. Linda's voice floated in again. Mark, please, just sign it. I looked at the pen. I looked at her. Her mouth was smiling, but her eyes were already packed. There was no room for me in that itinerary. No space in the rental car. No bed in the villa. Only a signature. Only the expectation. I said nothing. And she said it again, louder this time, as if repeating it would wear me down. Mark, please, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I didn't reply, just stared at the line where my name was supposed to go. My name followed by a promise to fund their future. All of their futures. Without me. Somewhere behind me, a printer kicked into life. Another family. Another set of tickets. I hadn't noticed it until now, but the window to my left was cracked. Not broken, just misaligned. Letting in a draft that whistled quietly across the floor. I thought about that draft for a long moment. How subtle it was. How slow but constant. That's how houses fall apart. Not in a storm, but in whispers. The silence didn't come from me. Came from her. Linda sat across the table, tapping the pen against her knuckle like it was a metronome for her patience. The travel agent had stepped away. Some issue with the printer, she'd said. But it didn't matter. The room had already split open, and neither of us was speaking. I was still staring at that line on the paper, the one with my name printed beneath it, like a trap disguised as duty. I'd built a life out of signing things without reading them. Mortgage renewals, school forms, grocery bills I didn't remember agreeing to. Somewhere in that process I'd stopped checking for myself. This time I checked. This time I looked. Linda exhaled like she was exhausted from the effort of being patient. Mark, it's not that serious. And that was it. That sentence. That nothing of a sentence. It slid out of her mouth like a cold hand pushing mine away from the table. Not that serious. I nodded once, slow. Right? She softened a little, mistaking the nod for agreement. I mean, the trip's already arranged. Everyone's expecting it to go smoothly. If we delay, the prices go up. You know how Tyler gets when plans change. There it was again. We don't want to upset Tyler. We don't want problems. We need this to go smoothly. Funny. There was no we when the trip was booked. No we when the budget was approved. Just me, the bank behind the curtain. The sponsor. Linda continued like she hadn't noticed the shift in the air. Look, I know this is sudden, but you've always been the responsible one. You know how to handle these things. No apology. No explanation. Just a veiled compliment meant to keep the machinery moving. And then she said it. I don't think she even realized what she was doing. Well, if it's such a problem, Let his real father sign it. You're not responsible. That was it. She said it like a joke, almost like sarcasm in a tense moment. But there was no humor in her voice, no playfulness, just flat logic, brutal in its efficiency. Let his real father sign it. I froze, not because of what she said, but because of how quickly it came, how easily she reached for it, like a dagger she'd kept under the table for years, just waiting for the right moment to slide it across the skin. You're not responsible. 12 years. A dozen Christmases, birthdays, car repairs, late-night hospital visits, busted sinks, tuition estimates, tax filings, credit card juggling, and debt consolidation. Not responsible. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because something was already breaking inside me, and I knew if I said a single word, the whole damn thing would come pouring out. The years, the weight, the resentment I had swallowed like spoiled food, hoping I'd learn to stomach it if I just kept quiet. But now she'd said it for me. You're not responsible. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the cheap vinyl floor. Linda flinched. Not visibly, but I saw the way her hand jerked slightly, the way her eyes locked on mine with that mix of panic and guilt she was trying to repackage as confusion. Mark! I didn't answer. I didn't shout. I didn't ask her what the hell she meant. I didn't demand she take it back. Because there's something about being cut open in silence that leaves no room for negotiation. It's not a wound you can bandage. It's an amputation. I walked out, left the papers, the pen, the itinerary, the family vacation I wasn't invited on. I didn't storm off. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. Because silence, my silence, was the only power I had left. I passed the travel agent on the way out. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't stop. The air outside was colder than I remembered. I didn't have a coat. I didn't care. The wind felt good. Sharp. Real. I reached the parking lot, found my truck, climbed in, and sat there for a while without turning the key. Let his real father sign it. Who was that man? Anyway? A face in a few photos. A voice on a phone every other Christmas. A check that bounced the one time it ever arrived. Tyler mentioned him like a myth, someone he didn't see but never stopped believing in. And Linda? She never spoke of him unless prompted, always careful to keep her words neutral. But when it mattered, when signatures were due and sacrifices needed to be dismissed, he returned. Not in person, but in the safety of implication. He was the father. I was the worker. I stared through the windshield as the wind whipped trash across the asphalt. Somewhere inside the office, Linda was probably trying to explain it away, calling it a misunderstanding, telling the agent that I was just tired, that I'd sign it later. I didn't care, because something had clicked into place. A quiet truth I had been circling for years but never dared look at directly. I was never in this family. I was around it, like insulation, like scaffolding, like the frame you build before the real thing moves in. I reached into the glove compartment, pulled out my phone. There was a text from Linda. Just come back inside. Don't make this into something it's not. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Don't make this into something it's not. I already had. Or maybe I just finally saw it for what it was. Back home, the silence hit harder. There were pictures on the wall, us at the lake house last summer. Tyler with a fishing rod. Haley pretending to laugh at some joke I'd made. Linda's hand on my shoulder. I looked at it now and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just absence. I walked through the house, touching the edges of things I had repaired. The kitchen faucet I installed. The stair rail I reinforced after Tyler cracked it during a party I hadn't been told about. The basement door I replaced after water damage. Water damage they told me about 3 weeks late. Every part of this home had passed through my hands. But none of it belonged to me. You're not responsible. I stood in the hallway listening. There was no one home. Just me and the echo of a life I thought I'd built. I went to my office, shut the door, opened the drawer with the bills, looked at the numbers again. Tuition, phone plans, health insurance, grocery subscriptions, pet insurance for a dog that wasn't mine, streaming services with logins I didn't use, Tyler's gym membership, Haley's apartment utilities. All on my card. All automatic. I closed the drawer. Not tonight. Not yet. The next morning, Linda acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee. She asked if I wanted eggs. She moved through the kitchen with the same practiced ease she always used after an argument she refused to acknowledge. I didn't mention the agency. She didn't either. We sat at the table in that quiet, polite fog that married people master when pretending too hard can almost pass for peace. But she knew. She could feel it in the way I stirred my coffee, in the way I didn't reach for the morning paper, in the way I didn't ask how Tyler's meeting went or whether Haley had called. I wasn't performing anymore, and without the performance, there was nothing left. No script, no applause, no reason to keep pretending. At 8:15, she got a call. I knew it was the travel agent because she stepped into the hallway and dropped her voice. No, he just left. There was a mix-up. He'll sign later. I promise. Yes. Yes, I know. I'll handle it. A pause. No, he won't be a problem. And there it was. Not a husband. Not a father. Not even a partner. Problem. I stared at my coffee and let it grow cold. I didn't return her calls that day. Not the first, not the fifth, not the message left after dinner, asking if I'd be home late again. She didn't apologize. She didn't say the words. She just pretended nothing had been said in that office. As if what had slipped from her mouth wasn't a fracture. Just a wrinkle in the day. A tone gone slightly off. An inconvenience. I let it sit. By morning, she was trying harder. Made my favorite breakfast. Eggs over medium. Toast cut diagonally like she used to before we had so many people in the house that everything was just grab what's hot. She stood behind me while I ate, watching for signs of forgiveness like a child checking the weather. She said, "You left your pen yesterday. I picked it up for you." I didn't answer. Later that day, I drove to the bank. It was supposed to be a quiet errand. Just to check balances, update a few mailing addresses, look into separating some savings from the joint account. The kind of visit I'd postponed for years because I'd trusted the structure we built. But the numbers told a different story now. The accounts were still under my name, yes, but the spending told me who was really in control. I asked the woman at the desk to print out the last 6 months of joint transactions. She hesitated. "Do you want me to filter for household purchases?" "No," I said. "I want everything." She printed it without another word. Stapled the papers. Smiled too brightly. When I got home, I read every line in silence. Groceries I paid. Tyler's vet bills for that dog he rescued and then forgot about. I paid. Subscriptions, streaming services, charity donations made in Linda's name, all paid from my account. Gas station in Cincinnati, Tyler. Hair salon, Haley. Ubers from a dozen late nights, all paid with a card under my name. Rides I never took to places I never knew about. One stood out, 2:13 a.m., 2 towns over. A drop-off near a hotel I'd never been to. I set the paper down. It didn't matter. Not anymore. Not because of infidelity, though maybe that would have hurt less. That would have been personal. This wasn't. This was strategy. Control. I walked outside. Stood in the driveway. Watched Tyler's car pull in 15 minutes late. As always. His music too loud, windows cracked just enough to let out the smoke. Not cigarettes. Not anymore. He stepped out, phone already at his ear. Didn't look at me. Didn't nod. Just passed by like I was another body in the landscape. A neighbor. A groundskeeper. Something functional but forgettable. I turned, followed him inside. He was still on the call in the hallway, voice low. He didn't sign. Yeah, I know. Mom said she'll get him to do it tomorrow. Don't worry. We'll move the money first, then he can't say no. Yeah, worst case, we say it was a mix-up with the bank. My stomach turned. It wasn't even anger, just clarity. Pure, cold, clinical clarity. This had been rehearsed, planned. My signature wasn't a convenience. It was the final step in a plan they thought I was too tired or too stupid to see through. I didn't say a word. Just walked past him. I think he saw me. I think he knew I'd heard. But like his mother, he didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. just turned up the volume in his headphones and disappeared down the hall. That night, Linda cooked again. She poured wine, sat across from me at the table, wore the old necklace I'd bought her before our 10th anniversary. She didn't bring up the agency. She talked about weather and work and Haley's new job interview. I let her speak. Then, between bites of overcooked salmon, she said, "Tyler was just frustrated. You know how he gets when plans don't go the way he wants." She said it without irony, without acknowledgement, without remorse, as if the issue had been timing, not betrayal. She poured more wine and added, "We can reprint the forms tomorrow. The agent said we can still lock in the rate if we act by the end of the week." Then she looked at me with that soft, practiced smile. The one that used to mean something. The one she used to use when she wanted me to say yes. I stood up, carried my plate to the sink, didn't answer. The next day, the agent called me directly. I hadn't given her my number, which meant Linda had. She was cheerful, chirping through the phone like everything was already settled. "Just checking in, Mr. Wilson. We've got your itinerary ready, and Linda mentioned you'd be swinging by today to sign the insurance waiver." I let her speak. She went on. "Just one formality, really. The bank needed an updated signature for the coverage extension since you're the primary sponsor. Once we have that, we'll process the payment. Simple stuff." "Simple," I said. "I won't be signing." Silence on the other end. A pause. Then, too quickly, "Oh, I see. Did something change?" "No," I said. "I changed." Another pause. "Well, if you need more time, we can." "I'm not paying for a trip I wasn't invited to," I said flatly. The phone line crackled. Oh, I must have misunderstood." Linda said. "Linda says a lot of things." The agent went quiet. Then, "So, to be clear, you're not authorizing the charges?" "That's correct." There was a paper shuffle. Then a clipped, professional tone. "Then I'm afraid we'll need to halt the booking. Without that signature, the insurance becomes void, and the lodging contracts will need to be reevaluated." "Then reevaluate them. Would you like to come in and discuss alternative options?" "I won't be coming in." She thanked me, politely, briefly. Then she hung up. I got another call that night. Linda. Not her usual calm voice. This one was tight. "You told the agent you're not signing?" "Yes." "You didn't even talk to me first." I said nothing. She went on, faster now. "Mark, we've already booked everything. The deposits." "You booked it." "I didn't." "You're punishing them." "No, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was ending the performance. I was removing my name from a play I was never cast in, only billed for." "Tyler already told his sister," she said. "Everyone knows now. They think you've lost it." I almost laughed. The idea that sanity was defined by how quietly you allowed yourself to be used. She tried another angle. "It's just a signature. It's not about control, it's about support. This is what families do." I didn't answer, because she was right, just not about this family. She hung up. What followed wasn't a storm. Not at first. Just small unravelings. The travel agent flagged the booking. The insurance lapsed. The bank required verification before releasing funds. The airline reservation was suspended when the payment method failed. Every domino that had been lined up so neatly, every piece of the script they wrote without me, began to fall apart. And I didn't lift a finger to stop it. I watched Linda make calls from the kitchen, her voice rising in clipped bursts. She talked about mix-ups, delays. She used the word technical issue more times than I could count. But it wasn't technical. It was personal. And she knew it. Tyler didn't speak to me for 2 days. He stomped around the house, made more calls, sent more emails. I could hear him from behind his bedroom door, trying to rearrange the trip, trying to find a workaround. But without my name, nothing moved. Because I had always been the lever. The one that made things work. The one that turned silence into funding. The one who, despite never being called a father, was always treated like a bank. And now, the engine had stopped. I sat in the living room that third night, watching the shadows stretch long across the floor. Tyler came in, phone in hand, and without looking at me, muttered, "You ruined everything." I didn't flinch. He looked at me then, really looked as if seeing me for the first time, not as a man, not as a stepfather, but as a wall he could no longer walk through. "You know they're all blaming you," he said. I nodded. Good. Because the moment they stopped pretending I mattered was the same moment I stopped pretending they deserved my silence. The script was broken. And for once, I wasn't the one being erased. The next morning began like any other. Coffee brewed, toast browned, the heater clicked on at the same time it always did, all powered by the same invisible systems I had built and maintained. But something was off. The quiet had changed shape. Not peace, something heavier. A silence that didn't ask to be filled. I sat at the kitchen table while Linda moved around the counters like a stranger in her own home. She didn't ask about the booking. Didn't mention the call. Didn't ask why the forms hadn't come through. We were beyond that now. She served breakfast without speaking. I didn't touch it. A few minutes later, she checked her phone. Froze. I could tell by the way her face dropped. Not in shock, but in understanding. The way someone does when the consequences finally arrive. "Tyler says the hotel canceled," she said, not looking at me. "The insurance flagged the policy. They said something about incomplete authorization." I didn't respond. She stirred her coffee twice, then set the spoon down slowly. "They said without the sponsor's sign-off, they had to release the rooms." Still, I said nothing. "Flights too," she added. "The airline voided the group booking. Something about unmatched identification and financial mismatches." She was trying to get a reaction. Some flicker of guilt. Some sign that I cared. I didn't give her one. Instead, I stood, placed my untouched plate in the sink, and walked to the hallway. Opened the closet. Pulled out the filing box where I kept every receipt, every contract, every unpaid favor disguised as love. I set the box on the kitchen table. Linda stared at it like it was a weapon. Inside were the papers she never asked to see. Tuition statements, vet bills, service fees for her daughter's car, Tyler's health insurance, dental coverage for a son who hadn't said thank you in years. I pulled out one envelope. Tyler's dental bill from last fall. $1,800 for a root canal he missed the follow-up for. The appointment I'd rescheduled. The payment I'd made without being asked. I laid it in front of her. Then another, Haley's deposit for her apartment downtown. She needed it last minute. And Linda had cried on the phone, said we couldn't let her lose the spot. That was 5 months ago. I hadn't heard from Haley since. I placed it beside the first. And another, Tyler's failed class fee. $600 to retake a course he skipped too many times. No one had told me about it. I found out when the bank flagged the charge. And another, the furniture for the guest room that turned into Haley's permanent crash pad. And another, the flights to visit Linda's mother, booked under family emergency. When I knew it was just her needing space. I didn't speak. I just kept stacking them. Each one a quiet monument to the lie of inclusion. Each one a price I had paid to stand at the edge of something I was never allowed inside. She watched in silence, her face pale, her breathing shallow. "Why are you showing me this?" she finally asked, her voice thin. I met her eyes. "Because you said I wasn't responsible." She flinched, just barely, but I saw it. "Mark," she said, "I didn't mean it like that. But that's what you said." It was a bad moment. Tyler was upset. "No," I interrupted. "He wasn't upset. He was in control. You were too. The only person out of the loop was me." Her lips parted, closed. No words came. I sat back down, folded my hands, let the silence stretch. And then, quietly, I canceled every auto payment. She blinked. "Every one," I said. "Tyler's insurance, Haley's utilities, their phone plans, your mother's subscriptions. Every line that bled from my account without consent." Linda's mouth moved, but she couldn't shape a sentence. "They can call their real father now," I added. "Or each other. Or whoever it is that gets the credit for the family I've been funding." She stood slowly, gripping the counter for balance. "You're overreacting," she said. I nodded. "Probably." Then I stood, left the box on the table, and walked outside. By evening, the house had changed. Tyler came home first, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the hallway mirror. His voice was already raised before he even reached the kitchen. "They froze my damn policy." Linda tried to calm him, tried to explain, but I didn't hear every word. I just sat on the back porch, listening through the screen door. "She said it's a system error," Tyler barked. "But the email says the sponsor withdrew." "That's him, right? Did he actually pull it?" Silence. "You're kidding me. Why would he do that now?" More silence. Then a door slammed again, his bedroom. 10 minutes later, Haley called. I heard Linda's voice rise, defensive and apologetic. "No, I didn't know." "Yes, I'll talk to him." "I'm sorry, Haley." I said I'll talk to him. They were unraveling, one thread at a time. I stayed outside, listening to the chorus of consequences echo through the house I had built with my silence. The next morning, Haley arrived in person. She didn't knock, just walked in like she still lived there. She found me in the garage where I was oiling the mower. "Did you really cancel my electricity?" she asked, holding her phone like it was evidence. I nodded. She laughed. Not a happy laugh. A disbelief kind of laugh. "Why? What did I do?" I didn't answer. She threw up her hands. "This is insane. I live on my own, you know. I'm not even part of this mess. Why punish me?" "You don't live on your own," I said without looking at her. "You live on me." That shut her up. I stood, wiped my hands, and walked past her. Behind me, she called out, "You're not my dad, you know?" I paused in the doorway, turned back. "No," I said. "I'm not. That's why the bill's yours now." She left 5 minutes later. Didn't say goodbye. The days that followed were filled with minor chaos. Linda tried to repair it all, calling banks, asking her sister for short-term help, contacting Tyler's father, who didn't pick up until the third try. And even then he said, "Not my problem," and hung up. The kids texted, called, tried bargaining, then demanding. I didn't answer, because the realization had already settled in. Not for them, but for me. The power in this house had never belonged to the loudest voice. Not to the ones who shouted the most or asked with the sweetest tone. It belonged to the one who could walk away. And I had walked. Tyler cornered me in the hallway one night, his face flushed, voice shaking. "You think this is some kind of lesson?" I didn't respond. "You think cutting us off is going to make us respect you?" "No," I said. "I think cutting you off is going to make you realize who was holding it all together." He shook his head. "You're pathetic." I smiled. "But I'm not paying your dental bills anymore." His face twisted. "You were just a stand-in. You were never dad." I nodded. "I know." Then I walked away. Linda stopped trying after that. She moved quieter through the house, answered calls in whispers, started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. We didn't fight. There was nothing left to fight for, only the cold arithmetic of survival. And slowly I started removing more. The spare car sold. The shared credit card canceled. The emergency fund split and my half moved. I wasn't being cruel. I was just taking back what I had never truly been given. A place, a role, a name. One night, Linda finally asked, "What are you doing?" I looked at her and told the truth. "I'm showing you what happens when the ghost you lived off of decides to leave the house."